All right, everybody, welcome back. Best hour of their day, not jerk block talk, but we were talking about that. If you've been around for a while, we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back. Phil Sabatini, Brendan McDaniel, East Coast Gold Weightlifting here at CrossFit Rife. We're going to talk all things weightlifting, weightlifting club, why weightlifters are generally unhappy people, all of those things. But yeah, so give a little background, each of you, real quick, just for context, right? So who are you? What do you do?
Phil Sabatini. I've been involved in weightlifting since 2006, so 17 years now. Mostly as an athlete the past 10 years or so, more so as a coach. Have been affiliated with East Coast Gold since I started weightlifting, and then have taken over as acting president. And, this is HQ. This is headquarters for East Coast Gold here. So,
former national champion, 94.
Yep, and 96.
Oh, okay. And then how many national titles does East Coast Gold have at this point, team-wise? Like
16, 18 maybe.
Yeah.
Both men's and women's.
Yeah.
Very successful. Since 1992, we've been a staple on the podium team-wise.
Cool.
Brendan McDaniel. I got into weightlifting in 2011. I started coaching. I was a CrossFit coach before, found weightlifting through CrossFit. Started coaching on my own, and then met up with Phil in 2014.
Right before you guys came here.
And then we've been coaching together ever since. And the only team I've ever been affiliated with is East Coast Gold. Before I was just trying to do stuff on my own.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to chat with you guys is I do get a lot of questions from hey, how do you start a weightlifting team? And very candidly, I really have an answer, because I'm not really sure I'm this is a thing that pretty much everybody that's replicable. Yeah, you could build a weightlifting team, but what we have here is very unique, which is cool, and I'm super happy about it. But I did want to kind of unpack it, talking about starting a weightlifting club, what makes a weightlifting club successful, all that kind of stuff. I'll also have an over-under on me for how long it's going to take Phil to be weird on camera. For somebody that's so talented, I still don't understand why you're so why you're so weird. Yeah. He's wearing slacks and a collared shirt, so
I had to work today.
Dress for the job you want.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit just about the team here. So, how many weightlifters do we have here?
I would say
55?
I would say 55, senior level, and then we have kids and juniors. I would say it fluctuates anywhere between 60 and 70, and sometimes more total.
And then I think I was trying to figure this out earlier. You guys might know. I think we're this marriage is 6 year, maybe longer, 6 or 7.
I want to say 2016.
16,
really?
we broke through the wall and came over here, right?
15,
so 15, we started.
So
at
8.
least.
So 8.
It's going to be 8.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Funny.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then so you and I connected because you're at another gym that has closed back 8 years ago, and you're looking for a home, and then we were over there, and we had three platforms first, and then we went to 6. Then it was a nightmare. Then we moved over here. It was a legit safety concern.
Yeah.
And then now what we have here is 18 platforms, which is solely dedicated. We don't do anything in here besides.
It's a training hall.
It's a training hall.
Yeah.
4 sets of jerk blocks.
Yeah. That's actually, is it 4? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it is 4. Yeah. Which is 4 too many. But yeah, it's been cool to watch you guys, and then looking forward to things you guys got coming up, more programs, affiliate owners who want to get stuff. We'll talk about all of that, but kind of, for people that are, some of the things that you've learned, both of you guys, because you guys have built this together, building a weightlifting club, just general takeaways. What have you learned? What kind of some of the do's and don'ts there?
I think, there's many gyms that have barbell clubs, but it's very different from what we have here. And I think the number one thing is something that you've always preached, with just the culture. And I think, our retention's amazing. People come.
They've been people here for 5-6 years.
Yeah. And from a quality standpoint, our lifters, even some of our newer lifters are lifters that technically don't have totals that would get them to national levels, are still pushing around some pretty substantial weight. Their technique looks really good. I think what we have is definitely a step above what you would see at just your general barbell club in any gym. And I think a lot of that has to do with the culture. Our coaching is really high quality, but also, the team itself, like lifters help lifters hold each other accountable. It's weightlifting first. We don't have a lot of drama and stuff like that. Usually when we do, it eliminates itself.
Yeah. They break things.
Yeah.
It's a very demanding sport.
Broke the light switch in the bathroom.
It's
just
really hard.
punched it.
Though,
I'm like, it's a motion sensor. You didn't even need to touch it.
Realize what you've done?
Yeah, the motor controls kind of skewed.
No,
so.
but it is a perfect marriage. Meaning, like there's obvious carryover, and I think more people can maybe not do this just because a lot of it is predicated on your background, your expertise. We'll call it lineage from Leo Totten and what you've learned from him, and then transferring that to Brendan, and then bringing on new coaches. But for somebody who's going to like start a club, let's just start here. From a programming standpoint, and this is usually what I try to preach first, there's a difference between kind of supplementary weightlifting, meaning which is what a lot of, they're like, hey, I'm doing CrossFit and then I'm weightlifting with a little additional stuff. And a lot of people come here and want to do that. And you and I, all three of us, have always been on the same page. I very, very heavily discourage that because this is the sport of weightlifting. And it is very different.
Very different.
Can you talk about just giving people an overall idea of like the volume and some of that with regard to like a traditional weightlifting program?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the frequency. Like most of the lifters train 4 days a week, and that some more. And of course, some less. But still, if you're going to just train 3 days a week, you're still going to be pretty tired, pretty beat up. Like there's so many different ways that we load or accumulate or whatever terminology you want to use for it. And it's pretty consistent, so it's rare that you can find success doing other things when you're really dedicated to a strict weightlifting program. Just as far as the difference is, yeah, I mean, do you want to speak on it, Bren?
Yeah, I mean, like the volume, like you're talking about the volume, you come in to the gym here, it's at least 90 minutes from the time you walk in till you're done training. And in that 90 minutes, if it's a snatch day, you're going to have your warm-up. You're going to go through whatever percentage work that's going to get you from the empty bar to your working sets. And in those working sets, you're going to have multiple reps up there. It's never just like a heavy single and walk away, Then you're going to move into strength work and other accessory work after.
Which is funny because other people are like, well, that's not the strength work.
Right. Yeah,
that's just snatching. And I'm like,
yeah, that's your skill and technique work essentially for the sport. And then you go to pulls, squats, and whatever other work you need at the end, whether it's more mobility work, specific strength stuff, something that's not with the barbell that's going to help you later on. It's built for your time off to be spent not for your time off to be spent doing another thing.
Right. It's funny you mentioned like how, well, that's not the strength work. With the national squad, the block that they're doing right now, we're still pretty far out from nationals.
When is nationals?
July 1st.
Oh, so we're like 5 months. Yeah. Okay.
So we've been doing a ton of volume. It was a really slow build. And this new block that they're on week 1 of this new 3-week block, is the first block that has had 3 exercises, like core exercises in it. The other ones would have like a snatch and a lot of reps, a squat, and then maybe like a superset, whether it's bodybuilding or accessory work. This block has 3 big exercises in it. So they might snatch, and they might back squat, then they might RDL. And everyone's smoked and complaining. They're like, oh my God, like it wasn't that bad until we added the RDLs in at the end. And it's really lightweight, but just the addition of that one exercise changes the whole game.
Yeah, and I think that's it's an education piece, right? And it's just like, and it's not to say that the supplementary programs are bad, but I think if you want to establish a legitimate barbell club, I think it should be looked at through the lens of like, let's put some people on the podium and not just like one person who has an affinity for weightlifting. Like, let's start to bring people in here. I mean, there's days in here where like there's no open platforms, there's people are sharing barbells, all the weights are gone, and we don't have a shortage of equipment here.
It's a big space.
It's a big space. It's like just for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's probably 2,000 square feet or more, just the weightlifting side, and there's not a spare platform in the house, right? And then there's people in this space. They're either warming up or transition, waiting,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. How many? Because typically you guys will send 20 people to either like one of the AOs or nationals. Is that?
Yeah, somewhere between 10 and 20. Like team-wise as a whole, including the people that we coach and our affiliates, it can be close to 30 from our specific location, and anybody that we work with remotely as coaches, it's usually around 15.
Okay. As far as when did you guys start the beginner program, or not your beginner program, like your, what do you guys call it now?
Developmental program.
Yeah. Like where you start. Well, no, not that one. So like somebody comes in.
The 6-week.
Yeah, their 6-week intro.
Yeah. I always want to say indoctrination.
Acclimation. I call it an acclimation.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to talk about too, because people don't want to hear the word introduction.
Get triple stamp, double stamp, Lord.
Like people want to come in here and they're like, well, I know how to snatch. I don't need introductory program or the intro. You know what I mean?
Which one was like,
okay, fine. Exactly. Because it doesn't matter. And I explain it to them. I say, it doesn't matter, like age, skill level, whatever. We have everybody go through this program. Even the national level lifters will go through this program, because this is what gets us on the same page: technique, terminology. We develop a relationship, but more importantly, as coaches, it's designed to see flaws. It's designed to exploit the lifter, and we see what the needs are, so we can program to that lifter effectively. And
so what would those be, right? So like you're like, hey, I need to figure out what Brendan's deficiencies are. Like, right. So talk about like, what does that program look like?
It's a ton of positional work. So it's a ton of holds. Yeah, hangs, holds, like snatches with a pause below the knee or above the knee or something like that.
I always love watching, just walking through and watching somebody who clearly goes on the new one and like can't figure out where the fuck their knees are at.
Right. Exactly. But it's little things like that. Like it's our philosophies that if you don't really have an understanding of where the position or what the movement or the phases of the lift stops and starts, you can't self-correct. You don't really have an understanding of the lift if you don't understand what people refer to as the first pull, which we refer to as the push. Where does that stop or start, and where does that stop? You can't tell me that. You don't know what technique is. You don't know how to self-correct, and you have no idea like what consistency is in the lift. Every lift is different then. So these are the kind of things that we get and opportunities to coach in the acclimation phase. And this is where we change the perspective of or change their perspective about what the lift actually is.
When did you guys change the name on that? Just now?
2018 maybe?
Yeah, it was a little
okay.
Ago, yeah.
Okay. That's it's something I've and I think it's a weird one, right? Because like, the name doesn't fucking matter, but like naming things matters.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's just and people hear acclimation and they're like, oh, good. Yeah, I need that.
I don't need introductory, but I need acclimation.
I'm a little nervous, and they'll look and they'll see some of our national level lifters throwing weights around and they're intimidated and they're like, oh, good. You're not going to throw me into that, are you?
No, that's 140. Calm down. But it's something I've continually learned, and we're kind of doing the same thing on the other side with the new program. But it is kind of hard to back into, because it's like there's a resistance to like find the right name because it feels wrong as like the programmer or whatever. But what you brought up is important. Like how people react to the name should be something that you pay attention to. If they have a visceral reaction to the name, and it's like, well, just change the name.
It helps with the buy-in too. Like if they're not immediately met with, oh, these guys think I don't know what I'm doing. Now they're like, oh, these guys want to help me. They've designed it. They're giving me a program to help me.
I mean, they still don't know what they're doing.
Right. We still know that they don't know what they're doing, but they feel better about it.
Which is all that matters, right?
But when the buy-in, you want like a little bit of skepticism, so you have opportunities to be like, no, this is why we do it the way we do it. Like you want some questions, but like 90% buy-in and 10% like skepticism is really good with a new lifter, because they're like, well, why? And then when you get to tell them, and they're like, oh shit, okay.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Or they're like, and that goes one of two ways. It's either, I never thought of it that way. Wow, like this is great. Yeah. Or it's like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but
that's not how I do it.
They can't perform the exercise.
Right.
They can't do it correctly. They can't even make a rep at like 60 or 70%, and they're super frustrated. And then like they just by default, they're like, okay, you win.
You guys are good.
So when somebody's looking for a weightlifting program, like what would be some key indicators from each of you? Hey, this is appropriate volume, appropriate position work. And I get that there's phases and it depends on where they're going. But again, think a novice. So they're like, hey, I'm looking for somebody or a program to start. What would you recommend?
I think my biggest thing is for somebody who's been coaching it enough or doing it for a long time, they'll be able to tell you strength and technique is quality specific. You know what I mean? So
meaning what?
Like they have to be good. It's not what you do, but it's how you do it that makes a difference, you know? So doing thousands of reps, like, so what you see a lot of programs might have like every single exercise on there that they know. You know what I mean? People are just like, okay, well, it's a snatch day. I know snatch balance, snatch grip jerk, snatch grip push press, power snatch from hang, power snatch from floor, full snatch. And they go through all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you see that, to me,
Run.
like there's no thought behind it, and we can do everything. Doesn't mean we'll get anything. You know what I mean? We need to get something. But that something has to be of the highest quality it can to transfer into technique. And then so does strength. Strength a lot of times is accumulation based, sure. But if you're not doing it well, then those like leaks in movement or weaknesses that we're talking about, they're going to show up when the weight gets heavy anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it has to be of a high quality. So I think from our standpoint, like you want to see like intent behind programming. So positional work, heavy, strength-based heavy, general movements, not a lot of fluff, because in the end, it's the intent that's going to make technique changes or increase the quality of the movement. Mm-hmm. It's not doing thousands of different things. It's like people, you know, well, what's a drill for that? Snatch. Well, I get my snatch. So, could you have a drill for that? No, snatch. You know what I mean? It's like, what's the intent, though? You can't just snatch. You can't just grab a barbell and throw it over your head. Like, what are you working on?
Right.
And you have to make an adjustment. You know, we say this all the time in the gym. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's like weightlifting. It's like, where you keep doing the same thing, do something different, literally anything different, you know? And that's where having intent in your training is what's, you know, most important. So,
well, how did you actually get into, like, how did you two connect? I don't even know that story.
So we're both from Pittsburgh. Grew up.
I don't want to fucking talk about it.
Grew up like 20 minutes away from each other, if that, and both ended up in Virginia. I was coaching at a meet in North Carolina. I took a couple people down, and Phil had...
Were you already coaching at Hybrid?
Yes.
Okay.
I was coaching at Hybrid and Stability. I started 2 separate barbell clubs and had the Hybrid people traveled with me. The Stability people didn't travel, so we would switch back and forth, right? And I was coaching there, took a couple people to this meet in North Carolina, and Phil was there with this other guy, Reagan, who's also from Pittsburgh. I heard their accents, whatever. I was probably wearing a Pirates hat. I was coaching, and we just started talking at that meet and found out that I was from Virginia Beach. He's in Virginia Beach. And then I think it was like 2 weeks later, I went over. He was at Accolade at the time, which is now the gym that no longer exists. And I went over there and brought the people that I had on my team to train with him. And we were like, yeah, let's do this. This is going to work.
How deep down the rabbit hole had you gotten into weightlifting at that point? Were you like pretty immersed in it?
Yeah.
Or were you still kind of doing a little bit of CrossFit?
I was like all the way committed to, at that point I really didn't care about my lifting that much. I was very interested in learning how to coach and program. And I was fortunate enough, Chris Wilkes, who's Kane Wilkes' dad, they used to live in Chesapeake.
For people to know, like,
he's an Olympian. Yeah. Chris Wilkes has coached him his whole life. They're super great people. I had the opportunity to...
I used to train in their garage.
Yeah.
I have too.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jess and I used to go there. This was probably 2009, 10, when we were like, we need to figure out how to lift weights. And that was when like weightlifters didn't exist. Like they were just like, you got to go to like a different country to find something. You know what the fuck they were talking about. And found out like he's in Chesapeake. And we like went over there and, you know, he's Chris, you know, he's Coach Wilkes, like he's that guy, but like we would lift in there and with Kane and Cody and Cord and it was just like I learned a lot in there, dude. Things that I still use today when I'm teaching movements. Like but Kane is a phenomenal lifter. He's a big boy. But yeah, that brought back a memory. Like just like every Sunday we'd go in there, and he would just abuse us.
Yep.
He would just like not like heavy weights, but what you're talking about. Like he would just expose us like in the worst ways with regard to like you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and but it made me
be able to see it.
Right,
So
be able to
he'll
see
say,
it.
okay, you're doing this.
Right.
So.
Right. And then it was like, but I learned a lot, just A, to be coachable, but B, about the nuances of weightlifting.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's a lot.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And I think people underestimate it. When you started how long, like, what was the hardest part about programming for you when you started getting into it?
So what Phil's example, that was me. I was like, all right, it's a snatch day. We're going to do it. So I took it from like, I want these guys to know that I know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to program so that they know I'm smart, which was the dumbest thing to do. I just wrote everything that they could do every time, and it was just way too much. Then I was like, all right, I should probably program to get them better instead of letting them know that I know what I'm talking about.
It's not working.
Right. So
they don't think I know what I'm talking about, and they're not getting better.
yeah, I dialed that back a lot and made it really simple. And everyone I worked with had some exposure through CrossFit, which is good and bad because when they come in fresh, they don't have any faults that you have to correct or any cues they heard before, and they're like, I don't know, I really like my coach. I'm pretty sure he was right. And you try to tell them something different, and it's like, all right, this is going to be a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that was the best thing for me, that everyone was like kind of good at weightlifting, but also really bad. So like they could get the bars where they were supposed to be, but I got to see every fault, and I just got to watch people all the time and work through it. And this dude, DJ,
Yep.
and Mike Stocks lifted with me the longest, and they were super patient, and they let me try a bunch of different programming stuff out with them, and they had really good results, and I just kept changing as I went, and I looked.
DJ was a Pan Am's guy, Masters, right?
Masters Pan Am's, yeah.
What about Mike? He just really liked to lift, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I took the apprenticeship role, so I reached out to Chris Wilkes and got to sit in on training sessions where he was coaching Kane, and I would just sit there and listen and watch. They'd tell me the program they were doing, and I'd look through some of past programs and stuff. And then with Phil and Leo, kind of the same role. When I was first working with Phil, I didn't write any programs at all, and I spent like a lot of times just in the gym watching. And Phil would be like, oh, what'd you see? And I'd tell him, he'd be like, okay, cool, same.
Right.
You know? And then just kind of go from there and build your confidence. And he let me write some programs. Now I program for the junior lifters and some other people on the team. I used to program a lot for masters and injured people on the team. That was
Are those
like
the same?
Yeah, same. That was like my niche at first, but now with the juniors, I'm having a lot of fun programming for them. And
That age range is what for you currently? The juniors.
For juniors in USA weightlifting, it's like what? 16 to 20 or something.
21, I think.
20, yeah, the year you turn 21, you age out of junior and into senior. But for us, it's pretty much, you just think of it as like high school age.
Right.
Most of them are like 8th to 12th graders.
Okay.
With who we have right now.
And then how many of those are going to a national level meet? Quite a few.
All of them, I think.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. They continue to train. Some of them are a weird point where they're getting to that top end of the junior range, and the numbers are getting a little bit harder, and they're hitting growth spurts. So it's like, all right, do I get bigger?
Right.
Do I try to cut weight again? So we're dealing with that. But
yeah, that's an interesting aspect of weightlifting, though. I get weights, like, and I always have to watch you do it. What's your walking around weight?
220, sometimes a little more. 222.
So then you'll cut to 96,
211.
Yeah. So, which is a decent amount of weight.
Yeah.
But I'll give you credit. You've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
You're not like
10
whiny.
years
You're not
later.
whiny.
Yeah,
You're not whiny
seriously.
about it.
Oh my
But,
gosh.
it'd just be so brutal watching him cut weight. But yeah, so with regard to that, like if somebody's looking at meet prep, what's a guidance, right? So forget programming. Like how does a weightlifter get ready for a meet?
Quality. Like we've talked about how, strength and techniques, quality specific, so is preparation to the meet.
What about like you just getting ready for the meet environment? So like what I got exposed to early, because we run two pretty big meets here a year. So 70 to 100 lifters roughly in each one of those is just the rhythm, right? Like I think I kind of worked and loaded bars first couple years just to kind of learn it. But like, and what I really was just like blown away was just like drop counts, all that kind of stuff in the card shuffling. I was like, oh, this is a fucking strategic little chess match here going on that I was completely unaware of prior to that with regard to all of that.
From a coaching standpoint, we have it down. You know, like I like to work the platform. I like to be around the lifter and be encouraging. And Brendan is a savant at the table, like with the cards, and he's always looking to like, you know, try to put other people at a disadvantage. And there's so many different strategies, and man, it's like we've got it dialed in.
So for somebody who's not aware of kind of how that works, give a brief overview of like why, because I think people just think they're like, oh, I lift and then they lift and they lift and then we go back through in that order, and that's not how that works.
Right. So at a weightlifting meet, whatever the opening weight's declared, 60 kilos, just to make it easy. Everyone has their opening attempts put in at weigh-ins, and you can change those. You have a declaration and 3 changes. The weight on the bar either stays the same or goes up every attempt. It can never go back down. So you can kind of gauge what your next attempt is going to be based on what the other lifters have in for their next attempts, and you count yourself out. You either do it by minutes or attempts, depending on the clock leading up to the session starting, or if you're going to open later in the session, you count other people's attempts. And then what you get used to at like a national meet is, you know, most people are going to change at a national meet, and it's a lot of the same faces. So, you know, like, man, I know this guy's capable.
Within this range.
Yeah, I know this guy's capable of 150. He's in at 135, 140. He's definitely going to bump that up. So you can take that into consideration when you count. But at a local meet, you get some people that are like, I don't know what any of that means. And I put my entry total in pounds, and they had to tell me what a kilo was. And then you get other people that are like, I'm the best local meet coach in the world, and I'm going to burn everybody's clock, and I'm going to use every change that I have, and I'm going to make this like a not fun experience for everyone else.
But I'm having fun.
Yeah. So you have to like find that middle ground, you know, like you want to get your lifter as much time as they need, but you also like, you don't want to mess for us, it's hard. We'll have like 12 lifters in a 14 person session. 12 of them are ours. So like, I don't want to burn any of our lifters' clocks, but I also want to give our lifters an opportunity to sit. So you go up to the table, you make a declaration, you put changes in. When you make your declaration, it will pause the clock, stop the clock, or move it to the next lifter. So you have some time to play around with. And if you come off a missed lift and it's going to be my clock, I can change my lifter as soon as the clock starts, and you go right back up and you lose your 2-minute break, and it's now a 1-minute break.
Yeah, I was completely ignorant to like that. Like if somebody's trying to imagine what this looks like, it's like your warm up is like literally reverse engineered all the way to be like, that person just took that lift, empty bar, go. Next bar drops, and you're like, go to your next weight. And then you're basically warming up almost in complete tandem with like the pace that the meet is going.
Yeah, every 3 drops typically we'll move to the next one. So you're counting out anywhere from like 21 to 27 minutes of warm-ups. And the challenging thing is, like, you can look at the start list and you're like, okay, that's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there's 12 people that are going to go before me. But what you don't realize is it's not just concrete. Like there's predictability there. Like you have to see, like, is this person going to take a 2-kilo jump or a 3-kilo jump? And if so, how many? So you might count 2 or 3 attempts just for that person. So it might look like 8, could be 20.
Right.
You know?
And that was what I was like, oh, I was like, now I see like the strategy. And I was like, and that for me was fun to watch. Cause like, what's the strategy here? And I was like, oh, never mind. This is like now kind of a mental game back and forth. Like, hey, particularly for if you have people that are going to be close in totals and like, hey, are we going to bump up or like, what are we going to, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, and that was cool for me to watch and get to see.
Like an athlete standpoint, that's why it's so crucial to have an experienced coach at the meet to handle that for you, because that's not something you should be worried about, you know, at the meet. And we see it all the time with new lifters. Either they'll hear their name called, maybe we're going to make a change, and they start to panic, or they see the weight on the bar. Let's say they're opening with 100 kilos. And they see like 95s on the bar, and they're like, oh my God, like I'm about to go soon, you know?
Yeah.
But it could still be 15 attempts. There could be like 10 people between 95 and 100 kilos. Right. You know what I mean?
And multiple attempts from some of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the part that I had no concept whatsoever about. And then I was exposed to it. I was like, oh, now I understand the kind of sport and the competitive nature of this outside of just what you perform on the platform. And this is where like the coach IQ really starts to come in.
For sure.
So
that's coach's job. Athlete's job is to lift. We'll load.
That's why. Yeah, that's why we work so well. Like at a national meet, people respond really well to having Phil in their corner. You know, he's done it. He's tall. A really good weightlifter, tall, handsome fellow. But, you know, it's like it's motivating to have a guy like Phil back there. And I know he hates to hear this stuff, but, like, at national meets, I always joke, he's a weightlifter's weightlifter. You can't walk through the room. It's a 45-minute walk to get to the back room because he's got to shake everyone's hand and talk to everyone. He knows everyone. He's just a good guy. So the lifters get that, and it's in their corner, and they're excited. Like, Phil's telling me I'm good. I'm going to be good. And I'm not a people person. So,
fact. You are in fact not a people person.
I stay at the table and I do the cards, and I think, a really good job. I've only messed it up once, and it was for Phil. So there's that. But it works really well. We keep the athlete away from the table. We usually try to warm up far away from the table. And Phil keeps them amped up and ready to go. If they're too much, he brings them down. If they're not enough, he brings them up. And I try to keep it as organized as possible, and it's worked out.
Communicate really
just
well.
about 100% of the time.
I'll just give him. I'll just look at him, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he'll like give me a number. You know, like just constant communication.
That's cool.
Really
That's cool.
fun.
That it's been cool to watch you guys progress and go through that, and then cool to watch because I have a unique perspective, probably even more so than you, because you guys are in it. But I kind of get like a distant view, and like watching people progress over several years at certain things. Like like Rachel, Andy, some of these other lifters who were like people who were like very novice weightlifters and coming in and throwing down like legitimate totals now.
We talked about that yesterday.
Like well over 140, 150 in clean and jerk. 110, like things that are like pretty legit.
Yeah.
And it's been cool to watch them, just not just as they getting stronger, but like it's very distinct change in technique. That is a significantly different weightlifter than they were 2 years ago.
I think Phil would agree, but like we're the most proud of, regardless of what weight is on the bar, when you watch someone from our gym lift, they move in a way that other people are going to be like, oh, they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It could be 50% or it could be a heavy attempt. And it's like, oh, all right, they're weightlifters. They get it.
Are you still enjoying retirement?
Yeah. Just the weight cut. See, you said it, and I started to sweat. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
So you just recently retired from competing?
Semi, yeah.
Wait, so no?
I mean,
making a comeback?
It's not ruled out.
You left it open?
I haven't ruled it out that I could.
You did?
Potentially
What'd you
lift
just
again.
clean and jerk the other, like last week?
400 pounds.
It's not bad.
I had a lifetime goal to clean and jerk 400 pounds at 40. So I turned 40.
And then clean and jerk
And
400
then,
pounds?
yeah, I had to strike while the iron was hot because I was feeling good coming off of Christmas time. And
I'm only going to get it once.
So took care of that.
The other thing I thought would be cool to talk about is, because you were a big part of this too, was the injuries, training through injuries, right? Like, shit happens, right? But you had a pretty significant injury.
2018.
I was going to say 3, but it's actually 5 years ago.
I know.
And I was actually writing a series of kind of articles on this just for education purposes. How long before you were back doing some training? I don't mean like weightlifting, but like...
Yeah, by week 8, I think. I was in a sling for 6 weeks. Once I got cleared from the sling, I could use safety squat bar.
But weren't you doing stuff even when you were in a sling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how many days, like a week?
Yeah, I mean, 2 days after surgery, I was out of the sling doing passive range of motion with PT.
Right. And that's kind of, I think a lot of people, CrossFitters specifically, speaking to that, they're like, oh, I can't train. And I'm like, no. Like, actually, the best thing for you
100%
is to continue training.
For sure.
Right? Like, can you speak to that a little bit? So we should also talk about, like, what's real quick, like, what is your day job? Obviously, this is you run the club here, but, like, you're not just like a meathead, right? Like, you have, like,
I mean, definitely.
Well, you are a meathead, but, like, you do have, like, some academia in your background.
Yep. I fooled a bunch of people and I got it. But yeah, I'm senior faculty at Old Dominion University.
And then what do you teach?
Kinesiology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a
Functional anatomy and strength and conditioning.
Yeah. So he's a body nerd, right? But that's important because I think a lot of people mess that up. You know, like you've helped me through some stuff for like slip disc. You're just like, oh yeah, just do some like press ups and you'll be fine in 2 days. And
Seems
I was
so
like,
simple.
I went from like being literally crippled to be like, oh, I think I'm fine. I was like, I'm never gonna walk again. And he's like, yeah, just do some press ups. And I was like, oh, it worked. And I think people misunderstand that. They're like, you don't have to stop training. You do have to significantly change what it is that you're doing. And then I know you were helping him a lot. And then who else? Was Nicole doing a lot of programming for you? At least some of the rehabilitative stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were doing a handful of like all kinds of different things. Just ever since that shoulder injury, it just sort of snowballed into other things. Like a year later, I hyperextended my elbow because my shoulder mobility wasn't like what it used to be. And then just the changing in positions because it wasn't as fluid as it used to be. I just got a lot more like
imbalances.
Yeah, muscular injuries, hip stuff, and like that was never around before. So
we should talk about what the injury was and what happened.
Approach to training.
So talk about the injury. What happened?
Dislocated my shoulder in first snatch in 2018 national championships, and I subluxed it. It came back in, felt strange, went back out, made 155 snatch. Had a really good attempt at 160, which was my lifetime goal. Had it overhead, just couldn't.
With a shoulder that doesn't work, by the way.
Yeah. And then went out and made all 3 clean and jerks and 1 gold in clean and jerk. And then within like 2 hours after that, I could barely lift my arm up. And we traveled with Jake PT, and he did a few tests. And I had pretty much no connection, rotator cuff in the back.
Just ripped it off.
2 rotator cuff completely from the bone.
Yeah. I remember when you showed up here.
Oh my God! So that was multifactorial, Fern, because
I know
that I either got food poisoning or I had like a adverse reaction to pain or something. But I was up all night.
Does it just mean you're a pussy?
Probably. Throwing up.
Never heard that, an adverse reaction to pain.
Yeah, there are people that enjoy it.
That's true. That's true.
Oh my God. So I threw up all night long, and then I tried to convince Brendan, I'm just going to stay here. I'll get the next flight out. Like I can't move. Like I was just puking and, shitting myself. And so
you showed up here, dude, and you were a wreck.
It was a mess.
We were in
Emotionally,
just
physically, sobbing. Like you walked up to me and you literally just put your head on my shoulder and
like,
you were
Congrats, dude. I was like,
I was like, what the hell is happening right now?
He
was a mess.
Well, I wouldn't let Brendan go. I was over there. We were hugging. He's like, all right. So then I saw you. I was like, Word.
I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. And you were like, his shoulder's broken. And I was like, okay. Oh, dude, it was bad. But I mean, you went, got it repaired.
Yep.
And then immediately back into training. And I do want to, one of the things that I think has bled over, and I think this is a direct representation of the both of you, but probably started with you, is like, you are what I would describe as like one of the most diligent, disciplined athletes with regard to training that I've ever seen. Like you are painfully methodical about training, right? Like, but that's a compliment though. Like I've been watching you for 8 years,
right?
And your training regimen has never.
It's very similar.
Has never like taken like a weird. It's just like, oh, he's not training right now. It's just nope. Walks in. Does the work, puts in the reps, make sure it's good, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat every single time, and which is like, yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, no more, you're clean and jerking 400 at the age of 40. Like
we talked about just yesterday how important consistency in training is, and you can see it with some of the people that take time off and come back, and where they are versus where their peers are, and it's like just that little bit of, not the little bit of time off, but like the things that they do in the time off, like if it's strategic, if it's not, if it's gone for a little bit, back for a little bit, kind of in, kind of out. Once they build that consistency back, everything starts to get better. But without it, it's a struggle. There's always something they're going to struggle with.
Well, it's just been cool to watch people, because obviously they take cues from both of you. Like you still just as regularly. I mean, he's obviously competing, like, has been more in the competitive side, so it's a little bit different. But people, they follow that. It's just like, and I've seen you get on some of the athletes who are like, you know, when they're young and they're like, oh, I can do it, and you're just like, you're gonna break yourself. Like this is not if, it's a win. Yeah. And if you're gonna keep doing this, like you're just rolling the dice repeatedly because you're taking this, like you're trying to take your body to the end, right? To the end range on loading, volume, all this other stuff. And I'm like, it's not going to pan out for you.
And they don't realize what they look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, they only know, does it either I can or I can't. Like there's no gray area. They don't feel like, they don't know what the positions feel like yet to do it correctly. So when there's flaws or whatever, they don't know, you know?
It's, they don't understand that you can miss a lift and it'd be a better lift than a lift that you make. And they just can't wrap their brain around that. They're like, no, I made it. It's good. But the positions were trash. Like, it was just luck that bar ended up over their head versus a lift that they missed, making the right technical changes that they need, but something else was a little bit off. Or they hit a position they're not used to hitting, and that's why, the timing was a little bit different, whatever it is. But they learned more from that miss, and they made more progress moving the way they did in the miss than just chucking the bar over their head. Obviously
different kind of genres, if you will, CrossFit, weightlifting, a lot of overlap. But how do you guys coach that? Because that same scenario, micro, much less dire circumstances, if you will, happens in the CrossFit space all the time. Like trying to get somebody to be like, hey, I need you to make a good decision right now. Like what's your kind of approach to that? Because it's not easy for everybody, particularly for like a lot of new coaches. And we're like, how do I get somebody to forget the load on the bar or the time on the board or whatever it's going to be and just make a good training decision?
I think it starts like with culture, and our philosophy has been and always been, we raise the minimums, right? And that's part of the acclimation,
right.
The acclimation phase is like, well, how heavy should I go? We don't prescribe percentages to a lot of things or like intensities or anything. And it's like, well, we work to what we call threshold weights through that. And every exercise has a different threshold for your technique and your skill level and your strength levels. And our goal is to, like, on your worst day, you hit this, and then X amount of weeks later on your worst day, you're hitting something better than that. Like the minimums are what drive the maximums. So, even, I don't know, what do you, we talk about this so much in so many different ways.
I think like just a big thing is like letting them know that just because you miss, like you have a number in mind that you want, whatever, it's a heavy day, or if it's not a heavy day and they're just not doing great and they're supposed to be hitting 85%. If they have enough trust in you as a coach and you talk them into, hey, let's go down a little bit and make some good reps, you get a lot out of that because they're going to leave on a make instead of frustrated, missing reps, and you can point out positives that came from it as opposed to be like, well, better luck next time, or you missed these because of X, Y, and Z. They get to walk away with a win, and I think that just changes their outlook for the rest of the training session, the rest of the week, the rest of that cycle. They're like, you don't remember the day where you missed 80% 3 times. You remember the day where you went down and had some makes and moved on to the next thing, and it's just kind of like getting them to buy in that like it's better to do work now for progress later instead of just trying to get whatever you can out of every single day or whatever. So I would imagine like in a CrossFit workout, if someone is just like really stressing over a number, or if it's like, hey, that I know you can do that weight, but that's not that weight for this workout.
Right.
Like trying to get through to them to be like, understand that if you want 135 on the bar, but maybe 115 is the number for you, and you do that really well today, the next time this workout comes up, 135 might be super easy. Yeah. But if you crush yourself with 135 in a workout that's supposed to take 6 minutes and it takes you 16, like you're not getting it. You're not understanding what the intention of this is. And it like our intention is like a huge thing for us.
And I think that's obviously something we stress on that side over there, but there's a lot, I work with gym owners and coaches, like a lot of them struggle with that. And I think you're right. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah. And it takes time. Like
that's exactly where I was going to go with that.
Like people don't really understand unless they've been in it long enough, how much fatigue gets accumulated from squats or pulls or presses and like all the different varieties of things that we do. Not, you know what I mean? You guys even more so. And so you're not, just because your 1 rep max is this on your best day, like that means nothing when you're under all that fatigue of loading, or like you have cardiovascular stuff you're doing or whatever. All of that is adding together. That's not your max right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's,
or you just might be tired, right? Like
exactly.
you didn't sleep,
We're
and it's just like
raising the minimums.
Right,
you know, like this is, it has nothing. That might be your maximum on your best day. Rarely. That's such a rare occurrence. You know what I mean? And so what can you consistently do in the gym at a high quality? That's what's important.
It's a good point that you bring. Like it's a rare occurrence. Like, because you've obviously done it far more than most people. Like, what percentage of the time do you think you're actually capable of like full swing?
I would compete
twice a year,
twice, sometimes 3 times a year, depending on, what I would need to do. But I mean, even 2 weeks out from the meet, I think the most I would snatch is somewhere between 145 and 150. And like, that's max, and then I would open at 150. And I'd hit 150, 155, and take shots at something over top of that. You know what I mean?
And you're literally only touching those on the competition platform.
Maybe twice a year.
Yeah. But that's what I think is the important part, is just like understanding is like you cannot do that all the time. Like the body will just not sustain it. It's just like, but you could operate in the 85, 90% for a long time.
Super high quality.
Yep.
And the carryover is going to be much better. So is the consistency. You only get 3 attempts on the platform. You know what I mean? So it's not one of those things, well, I hit 150, but I had to take 6 attempts at it. Mm-hmm. And on the last one, I accidentally, like we said, jumped underneath of it enough to make it. Now, you can't say that you made 150 then. You know what I mean? You say,
you could.
I was 1 for 6
I'm going
to
take it. I'm going to take it.
But, like, that's not a number that you should be confident with when it's meet day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You took you 6 attempts to accidentally make it.
Well, I think what's probably happening there is it's not about the process, right? It's just like, I just need to touch that number to say that I did it, instead of just being like, can I do that well? Can every time I grab that barbell, that weight's going overhead? Like, even on my worst day, it's right on the edge. Good. And it's right on the edge, but I'm still going to make the lift. Yeah,
exactly. Even under fatigue.
I think takeaway for like the difference between coaching weightlifting on our side and then coaching a weightlifting movement in a CrossFit workout. One thing that I didn't realize until I started just coaching weightlifting, it's really hard to cue someone in the middle of a workout when it's a movement that technical, right? But the benefit that we have is our relationship with our athletes is different because of the way we spend time with them while they're working out is different, because there's breaks in between. We can have a lot of conversations, and those conversations build understanding. So that 1 or 2 word cue, they're taking away everything they learned from that conversation. So like the biggest thing would be figuring out a way to like connect with the athletes either before the workout or in previous sessions, so that when there's a complex movement, it doesn't have to be a weightlifting movement, any complex movement that you're coaching or something you're not comfortable with as a coach, you should really take the time when you have it to talk about it so everyone understands what you mean. And then when it comes time to give that cue, they know what you mean when you say whole foot or elbows up, bodies down, whatever your like common cue that you use.
The cue doesn't matter. It's not the point.
What's it mean? You know what I mean? Like it's what's behind the cue, and we have the benefit of we can pack a ton of understanding into 1 or 2 words because we talk all the time. There's teachable moments over here.
This is one of my biggest, I don't want to say pet peeves, but arguments against a lot of what I would consider to be over programming in the CrossFit space. Just like strength plus metcon. And I'm like, what you're actually, number one, it's less productive. I mean, I'm not really getting a good training session out of both of those. Number 2, from a coaching standpoint, yes, just if we think about just the lack of ability to coach because I'm now just herding cats, but like long term, that's what you're forfeiting. I'm forfeiting a lot of athlete coach connection to like have, and that's why I think just do a heavy day. Just lift for 40 minutes. Just lift for 40 minutes and connect and connect those dots for people and be like, here's what we're talking about. Like, here's the little nuance in this that you're not understanding, or that's going to take you a while to understand. But if I've got 15 minutes, like work up to a heavy in 15 minutes, I'm like, you're not getting that. It's not happening. Like, you're just not going to get that stuff in. And I think I didn't realize that at first, but now I realize, I'm like, you want those moments. I want to talk to you for 3 minutes between lifts about that thing, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Because we're going to cover, like you said, we're going to cover a lot of ground. Otherwise, it might take me 6 months to tell you that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. The coaches that we brought on since Phil and I have been working together, Nicole, Zoe, Andy when he was doing his internship with us, Connor, and Rachel, all of them, when I was giving them advice or we were talking about we have them screen new athletes. And I said, it's really good because you get comfortable talking to someone, you get to teach a movement, talk about a movement. But the biggest thing is like you have an opportunity now to start that relationship with the athlete where find common ground. Like, what sport did you play? Okay, well, I played that sport too, or I'm from here too, wherever it is, they get comfortable. The more comfortable they are, the easier it is for them to learn. And then you get, like, especially as a new coach, if the new coach does the onboarding or the introduction or whatever you want to call it, that's their opportunity to not be seen as the new coach. They're just the coach. Now it's like the first interaction they have with this person. They don't know it's my second day. So I start a good relationship with them. We find common ground and we build a relationship that's outside of whatever movements you're doing. And then that way they're comfortable with you. You're comfortable with them. They can be a better athlete. You can be a better coach because of just the relationship. And that's like one thing that we did on accident in the beginning. That's just like how we are, and it worked out really well. And now that we can point that out and teach our new coaches that, they do really well with it.
Well, what you just outlined is one of the things that we harp to people when bringing an athlete into the CrossFit. I'm like, there needs to be a thoughtful process on like why you do the things that you do when you integrate somebody into the community. It's not just because one of the first things I do with like people there is they send me kind of like what they do in their onboarding. Like, we teach the 9 foundation movements. I'm like, stop teaching all of that. It's not useful. Not to mean that those movements are not useful. They are not useful in this context because that's not what this interaction is for.
Yeah. And who knows the next time they're going to do it.
Correct. Right.
You
So
know?
I'm just like, let's learn something else about them. Let's learn like psychologically, where are they? Physically, where are they? Like, what is their threshold for coaching?
Yeah.
Right? Are they just completely resistant to any? They're like, oh no, I know how to do it. And I'm like, oh shit! All right, now I got to know. Now I know that as a coach. You know, what are their limitations? And it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I've seen you guys do this 100 times. It's not rocket science, but it's just it's you being a coach, not just being a trainer who can list words out on a whiteboard. I'm like, that's not a coach.
Yeah. And let's be honest too, like the ones that don't, ask questions, the ones that they get the program and they're like, and they find a platform all the way over in the corner, they don't make progress or they don't last here.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to piggyback off of Brendan's point, that relationship early on, it's kind of like the new parent.
Right.
The first time that the kid says dad or mom or whatever, you know what I mean? It's fulfilling.
Yeah.
Well, it's like kind of like that coaching wise, when a new athlete comes in and they come up to you with a ton of questions and they're pumped about it and you're like, all right, this is going to work.
Nice.
What
do you guys got coming up? So you're going to get into the 21st century.
Yeah, we're getting on the internet.
So like, you guys are trying to move a lot into more virtual programs, which I think is going to be cool. I think
we got a bunch of stuff on the website, but it's still old news. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to try to get in. We're in the process of getting all of our stuff inputted on Train Heroic. We're going to get back to podcasting with the Jerk Block Talk.
Yeah. I'm going to hand it off.
It's going to be great.
We'll dub you guys the owners of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you technically own the Jerk Blocks at this point. So
yeah, we're going to be putting in a lot of different things, content-wise on social media too.
So if people, if coaches, box owners or whatever are interested, like potentially like either working with you guys to coach them or to like programs or anything like that to run at their box, where's the best place?
EastCoastGold.store.
Okay.
Has everything on there. Or find us on social media and
just East Coast Gold.
Yep, East Coast Gold Weightlifting at East Coast Gold WL actually.
Yeah. Follow. Tremendous resource, tons of experience. How many meets would you say competed and coached in at this point?
Oh man, probably close to 100 at this point, I would guess.
That's a lot. 10 years, or just
a little bit more. I mean, I started 2006, so
that's a lot.
17 years, yeah.
I feel like you should be better at this point. I'm just kidding. No, but I hope that's helpful for everybody. Again, if you guys have questions, reach out. You can reach out directly to me. I'll make the handoff. But and also open invitation. If you guys ever just want to come down here and hang out at CrossFit Rife or just watch these guys coach, we've never turned anybody away. We're not going to turn anybody away. If you just want to come in here and like experience what that's like, if you're even close, make the trip. I promise you will not regret it. Yeah.
Agreed.
Cool. Anything else?
No.
Awesome. You did it. You weren't weird.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.